Have you found yourself stuck, repeating the same patterns over and over and over again? Have you noticed how these patterns keep holding you back from evolving and creating a life you truly deserve? If your answer was yes, then stick around. Hey, Gabby here. I help women break free from old programming and heal their bodies naturally with the power of their minds. I am the founder of Reclamation School, a platform dedicated to holistic and integrative self-healing. And today, I will teach you about the 5 stages of healing. This is the basis to understanding how we navigate our emotions and beliefs that are primarily driven by previous life's experiences and underlying traumas. This is the one thing I had wished that was brought to my attention sooner on my own healing journey, because it allowed me to process and alchemize the most painful experiences in my life much faster. Now, the 5 stages of healing is there for you to shed light on your journey and give you guidance. And the key here is to begin to have the awareness of not getting caught up in any one stage, but rather to keep moving through each and one of these stages smoothly. So, let's begin. The first stage of healing is called the Oblivious. Now, it is the stage where we unconsciously choose to ignore the signs and the symptoms in our life that keep signaling to us that somewhere there is an imbalance within us. It is not so much the state of ignorance. It is rather a constant state of forgetfulness, as the word oblivious actually comes from Latin, meaning the state of forgetting. The process of healing is about remembering who we really are and what we're capable of. So to give you an example, it could be a long-term chronic health issue that the person chooses to believe that this is a symptom caused outside of their power. Whereas the truth is, it is a manifestation of their mental and emotional state of being. Another example could be a person is in a destructive relationship. They may not see it that way because they are oblivious to, number 1, what they perceive their worth to be, and number 2, they've never experienced anything different outside of this relationship. And instead, their conscious mind fixates on qualities such as attention, validation, safety, and security, but beneath the surface level, the unconscious mind manifests manipulation, jealousy, insecurity, hurt. What they may not realize that it's a mirror of learned emotional and mental processes, which is what brings them confusion, difficulty, stress, and unfulfillment within that one relationship. And so in this stage, we tend to see all problems outside of ourselves without any awareness of the problem existing within. So the person's life is primarily dictated by their primal and ego-driven needs and previously learned coping habits of survival. There is very little ownership in this stage, and the person is just at the passenger seat of their own life. Now, this stage can only be overcome by something or some force outside of us that forces us to see that these narratives keep repeating. And we become more and more aware of these patterns, and we finally stop denying them. This is what takes us straight onto the second stage of healing, called the victim. Having to face all of our problems and take responsibility is very challenging and overwhelming, and this usually leads to surrendering into the embodiment of the victim archetype. And this happens because the ego tends to cling onto old injuries and to navigate from the wounded parts of us in an attempt to protect us from the pain endured by justifying it as a sacrifice that we had to make. So we start to identify ourselves as a sufferer. And this is a way for the ego to justify that it's purely for survival, which also means it gives the ego the power to justify hurting others. And that's also why this stage has so much opportunity for growth. Now, we can translate the ego-driven actions to reflect the parts of us that need our attention. And I remember when I began my own healing journey, I really struggled to communicate with my family for about 2 years. And it was because I was stuck in this process of playing out the victim role and blaming those people that had the greatest influence on what I began to realize was childhood trauma. This is where we are usually met by a whole host of feelings, emotions, and truth that we never even knew we had, which takes us straight onto stage number 3, acceptance. And this is not any kind of acceptance. Brach defines radical acceptance as acknowledgement that there is both positive and negative. And as human beings, we experience both. And I will link her book in the description for you. So you see, we have to be willing to recognize the whole spectrum of emotions that we haven't allowed ourselves to previously feel, to go deeper into each one of these emotions that over time becomes stored away and fragmented in our energy body. And that's really what stops us from raising our frequency and attracting more than the frequency of these emotions into our lives. And this stage, we may be faced with guilt and shame, which also comes from confronting simply because we are creatures. We're societal creatures and we want to be accepted. And so this is a great time to understand that the process of allowing the emotions to surface for integration is somatic. You see, the unconscious part of our mind is where emotions are stored. This means all the emotions, especially those attached to memories of traumatic experience, are energy in motion that becomes stuck in parts of our body, which is why they play a great deal in our state of being and our health. That's why most emotions are felt in our energy centers like the heart center, solar plexus, and the sacral center. So what do we have to do if we want to keep moving through the stage? We have to take honest responsibility. Taking responsibility does not mean taking on the blame. It means taking back your power. Okay? Your emotional state paves your current and future actions, which means if you are disconnected from the current emotions you are carrying inside you and you aren't practicing the integration of these emotions, you are simply not in a position of mastering your current moment or your future. You are still at the passenger at the back seat of your life. And this is by far the most uncomfortable place to be in, because we can choose to stay under this muddy grey surface as a victim, or we can choose to move through it. And the key word here is to keep moving through it. You gotta get through it. There's no other way. It's kind of like a limbo, because we become fully aware of what we are replaying. And it's a broken tape, right, of these old patterns. So before we can get to the next stage, we have to delve deep into those core parts that we had to cover up in order to survive. That is why at this stage, there are the two biggest themes: self-compassion and self-acceptance. We have to put in the work to really cultivate a compassionate inquiry, which is the main aspect that Dr. Gabor Mate emphasizes in his own work. Instead of blaming others, we create a compassionate inquiry with these types of questions. What do my actions and beliefs remind me of? And where do I choose to spend most of my time in? Is it fear? Is it blame? Is it shame? Is it rejection? Is it abandonment? Now, when we begin to make that inquiry from a place of love, vulnerability, and honesty, we can be transparent with ourselves and others. And this takes us straight onto the stage we call transparency. Transparency is the stage where we begin to show up owning our truth. The narratives of self-blame transform into the practice of letting go of the expectations of how we should feel, and instead, we can surrender into the full spectrum of emotions without judgment. We are also consciously able to inform the ego that we're not going to die if we feel these emotions, which also gives more leverage to our actions. And by our actions, I mean our crutches, the addictive behaviors that allow us to cope with these emotions. And those can be absolutely any behaviors: food, overeating, alcohol, smoking, sex, relationships, and any other behavior that provides that temporary relief from pain to pleasure that we just can't let go of. Because addictions are primarily driven by these emotional templates. Most people say they don't know the true reason for their crutches, and that's normal because most people have learned to bypass this stage completely. Just think about it. It is so uncomfortable to sit in vulnerability and intimacy with yourself. So the ego finds a way to avoid it in the first place. Therefore, transparency is all about consciously creating a more space and intimacy for emotional integration. This is where we can begin to take our power back for good. This takes us straight onto the last stage, which is expansion and letting go. This mental shift, it has a ripple effect on our energetics and our physical body. We begin to experience more quality and authenticity in our current life. Our beliefs and behaviors begin to shift. Our goals also shift from survival to expansion because our energy is no longer contracting. In order for us to keep cultivating this expansive energy, we have to keep embodying ourselves and our emotions. So we have to track our simple thoughts, affirmations, beliefs, and we have to really become the observer of our ego, because ego will never go away. It serves a great purpose in our lives. But as we reach this stage, we have to have the ability to become aware of the wounded parts of ourselves without acting from them. This includes the connection between us and our inner child that always yearns to be loved and accepted. So the 5 stages of healing isn't a one-time process. It's cyclical and transient. It means that as we discover more unhealed parts of ourselves, we keep going through these stages. And so this isn't about re-experiencing suffering. It's about getting acquainted with the idea that all emotions can be felt. This is why your mind has to be ready to accept those parts of ourselves to begin this. And this allows the stuck energy and emotions to flow as we express them. And the essence of this process is really about becoming aware of these shadow aspects that manifest in our daily lives without judgment, without attachment to any outcome. So where are you getting stuck? What are your crutches and why? What stage are you at right now? Let us know by commenting below. Don't forget to like this video so we can reach more beautiful, gorgeous beings like yourself. And I will see you very soon.